You haven't properly researched the company if you can't formulate an intelligent question about what's going on at the company. Because I would venture to say that you haven't really dove deep enough into the company, the product, the subject matter if you can't come up with a single question. Companies want to hire people who are curious, because when you're curious, you find mistakes, you find opportunities, and those lead to increased revenue, increased bottom line. And that's what companies are actually interested in. About how asking the right questions can lead to an offer. My name is Jerry. I'm the very best at helping professionals in STEM careers brand themselves. And then we use that brand to transition. Maybe you want to transition into tech, or you're already in tech and you're unfulfilled. I use the brand to help people level up. All that. So transitioning, leveling up, and finding career fulfillment, all while earning your highest income ever. That is what I specialize in. And so every Thursday we get on and we talk about various career topics that can help you do those exact things. So a little bit of background: I started as an engineer. I moved on to managing teams of engineers, managing project managers, and now I'm a career coach. I've been coaching for the last year, and I love what I do. As you can see, I'm on here every Thursday giving away all the gems, all the tea. So last week in the interview workshop, part 1, we were talking about how hiring is a feeling, and how the point of the interview is to build a connection and to build trust through conversation. That is the point of the interview. It is not just to go rattle off every technical piece of information that you've ever learned and try to impress people with how much you know technically. A little bit about my background with this particular topic is that when I finished my MBA, I thought I was going into marketing. I was like, I have a technical background, I've been an engineer, but I want to do marketing at a tech company. And I went for interviews, and at the end of the interview, I was always stumped. I never knew what questions to ask at the interview. And I felt like I was just trying to get through the interview. I guess it was imposter syndrome, that you're just like, I can't believe they're even interviewing me. And so I'm going to take the interview and I'm just going to get through it, right? I'm going to cram. I'm going to get study as much as I can to get through it. And I really felt like I was learning a lot of new concepts leading into the interview. And so that's kind of like something you don't want to do, is to feel like you're trying to learn something new, like an entire concept, something new heading into the interview. But because of those reasons, by the time we got through, them asking me all of the interview questions, I was literally exhausted. I had gone through my entire mental Rolodex. You guys know what it's like with you're studying for, it's almost like studying for a final exam. You have all this information and you're just waiting for that question on the test. And so, it's an opportunity for high anxiety for sure. And so I was exhausted by the time we got through the interview, and all I wanted them to say was that it was over, so that I could go take a deep breath and actually, exhale and decompress. And another reason I didn't have any questions at the end of the interview is that I discovered that I didn't really know enough about the role and the topic to ask anything intelligent. And so do me a favor, drop I've been there in the chat if you know what I mean. You've gotten through an interview, you're exhausted at the end, and that's why you didn't ask any questions, or you really don't know enough about the company, the role, the topic to engage in this conversation. And we talked about last week that engaging in the conversation is what actually leads to an offer. The problem when you are too exhausted or you don't know enough about the topic to ask any questions is that you cut off the conversation completely. And what job seekers aren't thinking about is that this can make the hiring manager feel like you are not interested. Like maybe you thought you were doing them a favor by showing up for the interview. I've been there too. I've been the manager on the other side where you get to the end of the interview and the person's just like, nope, I'm good. And you can't tell if like, did they not like something they experienced in the interview? Did they not like the company? Do they not like the job? Like, is there something that they don't like that, you know, they're just not comfortable saying? And is that why they're cutting the conversation short with me, essentially? So it's kind of like, you know, when you're in the conversation with a friend and you guys are, you know, maybe they talk for 15 or 20 minutes and then they look at you and they're like, do you have anything to say? And you're just like, nope. Like, you wouldn't do that to a friend. You wouldn't do that in a real conversation. So that definitely shouldn't be your approach during an interview. And that's essentially what you're doing. You don't have any questions. It's like, I just showed up for you to ask me questions. And when you're done, like, we can go. But an interested candidate, they want to spend a little bit more time with you. They have questions, you know, they're invested in the process. So we don't want to cut the conversation short because we know conversations lead to offers. So what are the right questions that can lead to an offer? The questions that lead to job offers are questions that amplify your interest and they amplify your knowledge. What does that mean? A question that amplifies your interest is a question that's centered around the culture of the company. Are you actually interested in the culture of the company? That means you possibly see yourself there. Another type of question that amplifies your interest is a question about the product. So you've sat through this interview for the last, 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and they've been talking about this product. Are you interested in the product? Because if you're not interested in product, you're probably not going to last that long at this job and at this company. So another question that amplifies your interest is asking about the company. Is there something you saw on the website that you really want to ask about? Is there something you read, in press, in media, somewhere that you want to take the opportunity to actually ask a real person? Hey, I read about this. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then another way to amplify your interest is taking an interest in the person that's sitting across from you. So last week we talked about how in your tell me about myself answer, you're dropping little nuggets and you're going to see which nugget that the interviewer is going to pick up on. And so in order to show interest about, the person who's sitting across from you, you should be doing the same thing. Is there anything they said during the interview that sparked your interest? Maybe they mentioned where they went to school. Maybe they mentioned how long they've been at the company. Is there anything that they said that you can pick up on and say, oh, I want to ask more about that? Now, ideally, you can't get through all four of those. So you have to pick your favorites. You have to pick something that's really important to you, something you really want to know about. Because trust me, interviewers can tell when you're just asking a random question that, it has nothing to do with anything we talked about today. It's really random. And it's like, where did this person get this from? It's clearly left field. The other thing you don't want to do is ask questions that have a yes or no answer. That doesn't foster conversation either. So make sure they're open-ended, that allow the person to think and actually give their perspective. The second type of question that leads to an offer is questions that amplify your knowledge. So the question series, the question period of the interview is actually another opportunity for you to display, your skill set, what you know, how you add value. So questions that amplify your knowledge are questions that show you can get into the weeds. So we've been through this 30-minute interview. Is there anything that they mention that you can pick out a detail and dive into it. Ask an intelligent question. The second thing is that types of questions that amplify your knowledge are questions that show you are curious. You mentioned something. Tell me more about that. The third type of question that amplifies your knowledge is asking questions about attention that show you have attention to detail. So basically, all of the questions that amplify your knowledge, they're really about the detail, because that's what's going to happen on the job, right? You're going to get a problem. You're going to be introduced to something, and it's up to you, to figure out how much more information do I need to get to the end result, and what do I need to do to get to the end result. And so an example of maybe an attention to detail question is, what were some of the challenges you all faced while doing X, Y, and Z? So it shows that you're listening, right? And it shows that you understand that there are challenges throughout, along the way, throughout projects as teams and companies try to implement them. And that idea, a really good example kind of just popped into my head. When I was a manager at Tesla, one of the questions that I got from a candidate was something like, what are some of the challenges that you guys faced during the Model 3 launch? And it's like, clearly it's a topic that I could probably talk about, for over an hour. But it showed that this person is paying attention to what's going on. They know what's going on with the company. They didn't come to the interview, just to rattle off what they know and to, say, pick me. They came to the interview because they're genuinely interested. You haven't properly researched the company if you can't formulate an intelligent question about what's going on at the company. Because I would venture to say that you haven't really dove deep enough into the company, the product, the subject matter, if you can't come up with a single question. Companies want to hire people who are curious, because when you're curious, you find mistakes, you find opportunities, and those lead to increased revenue, increased bottom line. And that's what companies are actually interested in. So if you struggle with attention to detail and picking things out, maybe ask a friend. I'm going on an interview with XY company and this is what they do. See what questions they ask you. Because a person who's not involved at all, they're going to have some questions. They're going to say, well, what does their product do? And how do they do that? And where are they based? And, so there's the tip, the gem. I just came up with it live on the spot. If you are not naturally curious and you can't think of any questions to ask, introduce the concept to someone else, a close friend, anybody, and see what questions they ask you. That will help give you some idea. If you would like my help in formulating the exact questions that you should ask, or if you would like access to my scripts that will guide you through the entire job search process, go ahead and drop "I need this" in the chat. Now, I'm going to get into some of these questions that we have. Christopher also says, after the interview, you've waited for 4 days. Is it advised to send a mail regarding the interview? It depends on what the conversation was like. I would advise 100% before the end of the interview that you ask, and this is a question you should ask, what are the next steps and what should I expect? Because I think people assume that they're going to get back to me ASAP, but you don't know that. What if they're going on vacation? What if they have 5 other candidates to interview? What if they have, a strenuous process where you can expect at least 7 days before you hear? So you don't know what the process is. And one thing I don't want candidates feeling undue stress because they simply didn't ask a question. And you're at home stressing because you think they didn't get back to you and you didn't get the job and, what have you, when you could have had the information up front. So At the end of the interview, if you ask that, you'll know. If they say a week, then give them a week before you follow up. But most certainly follow up if you haven't heard back. You definitely want to follow up at least once. And their reaction to that follow-up will pretty much tell you how things are going. Because if they're really interested in you, they're going to reply and say, give us a little more time. This is what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. If they don't reply, that's very bad on their part. But at least you have your answer. And so actually what I tell my clients is give them a week, follow up, give them 3 more days to reply. So that's a total of 10 days. If you haven't heard anything from the company in 10 days, it's highly unlikely that you have the role, because companies don't want to lose you either. If they really want you, they have to assume that you're interviewing with other companies. And so 10 days not to hear anything is pretty much unacceptable. Sharia says, I like to share stats related to the company or share client review about the product or service that I find interesting. That is awesome. And that's a good tip, right? If they offer a service or a product, go read the reviews. Wow, you could learn a whole lot about what's really going on. Those would be great questions, because if you read a review and it says the customer service is terrible, and you know that you're interviewing with the customer service team, it's like, what are some of the challenges you guys are having? It seems like, I've seen a lot of reviews out there. I mean, that's engaging in conversation. That's really interesting conversation, one that I would want to engage in as a hiring manager, because it's about the work, and I can start to see how you think and who you are. But that's all I have for today, guys. I want to thank everybody for joining, and we'll be back next Thursday. Bye.